You are no stranger to the committee. You've been here before and have answered questions as asked. I will just remind my colleagues that with 14 years' experience on the bench, you've issued more than 3,250 written opinions and presided over 271 total trials. There will still be efforts made by the members of the committee to ask you to be specific in your beliefs, and I know that there are certain areas where you can be and others where you cannot be. But I think the fact that you have so many published opinions should give us some indication of your judicial philosophy, as I've gleaned it from my review. But I want you to speak to another topic, which I know is very important in your life and one of the major reasons for your presence here today, and that is your family and their experience in coming to the United States. We have had so many inspiring immigrant stories. Yours is one of them, and I hope you'll share it with us now. What does this moment mean to you and your family?
So I'm sad that my father is not able to be here today because he is the first one to immigrate to the United States, and he would have loved this moment. He loved this country. He studied every single president of the United States. He dragged us around every time to see every single presidential library. He stood in the rain to watch when presidents passed away, to see their funeral processions. He made us stand in the rain to do the same, and he loved the United States and was so grateful to be here. My mother is kind of one of my heroes because she grew up in North Korea, and in 1946, in the spring, she decided that she wanted to go to South Korea, where her father was working for the South Korean government. And so she and her uncles basically escaped. It was illegal to leave North Korea. The 38th parallel had been established in August the year before, but it was porous. It was not enforced. So she and her uncles, she was about 10 at the time, walked for 2 weeks to come to South Korea, to freedom in South Korea. And along the way, they had to go through all these military checkpoints. And the uncles would go through the checkpoint, but she had South Korean currency and all their papers sewn into her undergarments. So she would just drop to the floor and she would start playing jacks so that no one would suspect she was anything but a local kid. And so then once her uncles went through the checkpoint, they would all meet up again, and they walked at night. They rested during the day because they didn't want to be seen when they were going through all the mountains. And she got yellow fever during that time, but her uncle carried her on his back they shared the load because they were all getting tired at that point. And the amazing thing is my mother never told us this story until my family, when I was in college, we were at Colonial Williamsburg, and we were walking around these fields. And my mom, who had never mentioned this, all of a sudden says, "Oh, this reminds me of the time I escaped North Korea." And we were all shocked, like, what are you talking about? And later, I actually gave the commencement address at William and Mary Law School in Williamsburg. And in my address, I said, "I hope you don't take offense, but your town reminds my mom of North Korea." So I think this is a very special moment for my family, and I'm so grateful for everyone for allowing us to be here.
Can you recount your family's experience living in Mississippi?
Yes. So we moved to Mississippi in 1972, and we first lived in Lorman, which is really a very small town. It only has Alcorn State University, which is the first African-American land-grant college in the United States. And at that time, I did kindergarten in Alcorn, went to an all-African-American kindergarten, and there were no primary or secondary schools there, so we took a 45-minute bus ride up to Port Gibson, and there we went to, my brother, sister, and I went to public schools there. My first, second, third grades were all African-American, and I just remember at the time there was an immense amount of poverty. And my mom actually was a nutrition professor, and so she was actually getting federal grants to actually measure the success of the war on poverty. So she actually did a lot of studies about poor the poor rural population in Mississippi to see, were these nutrition programs working? Was it enhancing their nutrition status and their health status? There was just a tremendous amount of poverty. Later, I moved to Vicksburg, Mississippi in 3rd grade, and I thought the school was integrated. It seemed integrated to me, but later in law school, when I was an intern for the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, I learned that there was actually a consent decree for my school district in Mississippi. I think the poverty that I did see growing up is something that has always stayed with me. It's like an image that I can remember sitting on the buses and seeing some pretty dilapidated homes and little toddlers in front crying, and it was, that's been a searing memory that stayed with me.
Thanks, Judge Koh.